Her name is Sloane Harris, a retired elite operator, expertly trained in tactical warfare and known for her deadly calm under pressure. He assumed she was just another target. The sharp slap echoed through the neighborhood. What he didn't realize was that Sloane was far more dangerous than anyone he had ever confronted. Now, she's about to expose a system that has shielded men like him for years. As the threats escalate and attacks become personal, Sloane's military background becomes her most powerful weapon. What happens when the strongest woman in the room decides it's time to tear it all down? Before we dive deeper, drop a comment telling us where you're watching from, and don't forget to subscribe. Tomorrow's story is one you won't want to miss. The morning air was crisp as Sloane Harris stepped onto her porch. Dawn barely lit the rooftops of Arlington. She knelt down, expertly double-knotting her running shoes, a habit ingrained through years of military precision. Each loop was exact and secure. Her smartwatch glowed 6:15 a.m. in soft blue. She tapped the screen, selecting her favorite podcast on combat psychology. Dr. Sarah Chen's voice filled her earbuds, discussing how heightened situational awareness lingers in veterans long after service ends. The key is learning to channel it productively, Dr. Chen said. Sloane smiled quietly. 7 years into civilian life, and those words still held true. Her eyes scanned the quiet street. Left, right, left again. Old instincts die hard, especially when they've kept you alive across 3 continents. Behind her stood a modern 2-story home, sleek lines, large windows, designed for visibility, multiple exits, and reinforced security. To her neighbors, it looked like any upscale house, but Sloane had tailored every detail with the same precision that led her to command Delta Force's most elite units. She began her warm-up stretches, muscles responding with familiar readiness. At 48, Sloane was fitter than many operators half her age. This routine wasn't just about physical strength. It was the discipline that defined her existence. The first mile was always peaceful. Her steady pace carried her past manicured lawns and sprinklers humming to life. The neighborhood stirred gently. Mrs. Chen from 234 walked her Pomeranian, nodding politely. They'd exchanged fewer than 50 words in 7 years, just how Sloane preferred it. The podcast shifted to the challenges of reintegration. Sloane's mind wandered to her own transition. Consulting for federal agencies let her apply her expertise without the dangers of the field. But lately, something felt off in her neighborhood. More patrol cars, more random stops, more reports describing suspicious individuals who almost always looked like people of color. The change had been subtle at first, but Sloane's training made her sensitive to shifting patterns. What many saw as added security, she recognized as early surveillance and control. Ahead, a young black woman pulled out of her driveway. Her expression tightened as a patrol car rolled slowly past. Their eyes met briefly. Sloane understood the look. Constant calculation to appear non-threatening, to avoid drawing attention, to navigate a world where mere presence raises suspicion. Sloane kept her pace, her breath steady and controlled. The sun climbed higher, casting long shadows over trimmed hedges and spotless sidewalks. A cluster of dog walkers laughed nearby, their voices drifting softly. Her watch showed nearly 2 miles. Dr. Chen's voice continued, emphasizing the balance between routine and vigilance. Sloane had built her civilian life around that balance, fully present in her community, while keeping her skills concealed. Approaching the corner of Hawthorne Street, halfway through her run, a delivery truck passed by, its driver offering a friendly wave. Sloane nodded slightly, her peripheral vision catching movement ahead. The low rumble of a powerful engine came first, then the reflection, white and black paint, a distinctive light bar. Sloane didn't break stride or turn, but her senses sharpened instantly. Crown Victoria, single occupant. Moving at about 7 miles per hour, Sloane's steady pace was suddenly accompanied by a drop in the patrol car's radio volume, which had been audible through the open windows. The vehicle closed in from behind, matching her speed. Sloane kept running, her face calm even as the familiar tension settled into her shoulders. 7 years in this neighborhood, hundreds of morning runs, but today felt different. The patrol car edged left, accelerating slightly to align with her side. The front bumper pulled alongside her, then the passenger door, then the rear quarter panel. As she neared the corner of Hawthorne and 12th, the car angled toward the curb, cutting off her path. The passenger door opened slowly and deliberately. Officer Kyle Brenner stepped out, adjusting his belt with the practiced confidence of someone who enjoyed making others wait. His crisp uniform and shiny badge didn't mask the disdain in his eyes as they locked onto Sloane. "ID!" he demanded sharply, skipping any introductions or explanations. Sloane stood still, breathing steady despite the unexpected stop. "May I ask why I'm being stopped, officer?" she inquired evenly. Brenner's lips curled in what might have been a smile, but there was no warmth. "There's been some break-ins around here. You fit the profile." His gaze lingered inappropriately over her athletic build. "I live 3 blocks away," Sloane replied calmly. "I run this route every morning." "ID," Brenner repeated, stepping closer. "Unless you're hiding something." Sloane noticed his hand resting casually on his holstered weapon, a clear intimidation tactic she'd seen far too often. She kept her tone even, but her mind cataloged every detail. His stance, his weight shifting aggressively forward. "My ID is in my phone case," she said clearly. "I'll reach for it slowly." "Make it quick," Brenner snapped, tightening his grip on the weapon. Holding eye contact, Sloane carefully retrieved her phone, extracting her driver's license with 2 fingers. Brenner snatched it and studied it with exaggerated scrutiny. "Sloane Harris," he read aloud, drawing out each word. "Well, Ms. Harris, since you're so cooperative, we might as well be thorough." "Hands on the car," he ordered. "Is that really necessary?" Sloane asked, already knowing the answer. "Questioning my authority?" Brenner's voice hardened. "Hands on the car," he repeated. Sloane complied, pressing her palms flat against the warm patrol car. Years of training flooded her muscles. Pressure points, counter moves, countless ways to neutralize a threat. But she suppressed every instinct, holding still as Brenner approached. His pat-down was rough and lingering, far beyond protocol. Sloane kept her breathing steady, focusing instead on a small scratch in the car's paint rather than the violation she was enduring. She had faced worse in resistance training, but this was different. This was her neighborhood, her morning run, her home. Then came the slap, sharp, deliberate, humiliating. Brenner's hand struck her bottom with enough force to echo in the quiet morning. "All clear, sweetheart," he drawled, voice thick with satisfaction. "You can go on now." Sloane's hands trembled slightly, not from fear, but from the immense effort to maintain control. Every fiber of her wanted to respond, to make it clear just how far from all clear things really were. But she recognized the trap. One wrong move, one justified reaction, and she'd become another statistic, the aggressive suspect resisting a routine stop. Brenner stepped back, tossing her ID onto the ground between them. "Have a nice run," he said, clearly disappointed by her silence. "Be careful out there. You never know what kind of trouble you might find." Only after he returned to his cruiser did Sloane bend down to retrieve her license. Her movements were precise and controlled, hiding the storm building inside. She watched from the corner of her eye as Brenner spoke into his radio, likely inventing whatever justification he needed. When the patrol car finally pulled away, Sloane allowed herself to feel the full weight of what had just happened. Her hands steady now, she pulled out her phone. Muscle memory guided her fingers as she dialed. 2 rings, then a familiar voice answered. "Connell Jackson." "Ray?" Sloane said calmly, the same tone she used in the most critical operations. "I've got a situation. Need to handle it quietly for now." She watched Brenner's car vanish around the corner, its tail lights glowing like watchful eyes in the morning shadows. Around her, the neighborhood continued its peaceful routine. Sprinklers watering lawns, birds singing, neighbors starting their days. But everything had changed. The illusion of safety in her own community shattered, replaced by a sharpened clarity of purpose. The sun climbed higher over Arlington rooftops, casting long shadows across where she stood. 7 years as a civilian had taught Sloan patience, but 2 decades in Delta Force taught her something else: the art of waiting for the perfect moment to act. The granite countertop was cool beneath her forearms as she sat perfectly still, eyes locked on her laptop screen. Her service weapon, a custom Sig Sauer P226, rested beside her, its presence both grounding and necessary after the morning's confrontation. The weight of it reminded her who she was beneath the civilian facade. On the screen, footage from her smartwatch played silently. She had almost forgotten she'd activated the recording, a habit drilled into her from Delta Force days. Always document everything. Watching herself from an outsider's view, Sloan noticed how Officer Brenner's body language betrayed his intentions from the moment he stepped out of the patrol car. "Classic predator tactics," she muttered. He positioned himself to block her path, his dominant hand lingering near his weapon. The wrist cam captured every detail: his wandering eyes, the unnecessary touching, the deliberate humiliation. When the slap landed, Sloan's jaw clenched. The sound was unmistakably clear on the recording. She quickly made 3 encrypted backups of the video, storing each on separate secure drives, one for Ray, one for her lawyer, and one she kept personally. The original copy stayed on her watch. Let them try to take it if they came looking. Opening a new browser tab, Sloan typed Officer Kyle Brenner's name and badge number. Thanks to her federal clearance, she accessed databases off limits to most civilians. Minutes later, a disturbing pattern emerged. 8 complaints in 3 years, she read aloud, scrolling through sanitized reports. All involved female suspects, all during routine stops. Officially, investigations stalled. Insufficient evidence. Victim declined cooperation. Witness statements withdrawn. But between the lines, Sloan saw the truth. These women hadn't just walked away, they'd been silenced. One case stood out. A young black woman named Tama Roberts, pulled over for a broken tail light. The complaint mentioned an inappropriate search. Halfway through the inquiry, Roberts abruptly moved out of state. Her forwarding address? A vacant lot in Nevada. Sloan opened her encrypted email and attached the video file, sending it to Ray with a brief message. Morning encounter with Arlington PD, Officer Kyle Brenner. Need background. Ray's reply came within 2 minutes. He's protected. Cousin runs internal affairs. 2 uncles on city council. You sure you want to go down this road? The question lingered in the quiet room as Sloan moved to her kitchen window. The same patrol car from that morning cruised slowly past her house, more cautious than necessary. Message received. They were watching, waiting to see her next move. Back at her laptop, fingers flying across the keyboard, Sloan dug deeper. Brenner's personnel file was heavily redacted, but the gaps told a story on their own. 3 precinct transfers in 5 years, disciplinary hearings mysteriously disappearing, glowing performance reviews despite mounting complaints. Her phone buzzed. Another message from Ray. Just heard from a contact. Brenner's cousin in internal affairs, James Brenner, buried at least 15 serious complaints in the last year. Family business. Sloan's military training kicked in, turning anger into focus. She needed more evidence, more connections, more insight. Scrolling through her contacts, she found a name she hadn't called in years: Marcus Chen, former NSA analyst turned private investigator. The phone rang twice. Chen Investigations. Marcus, it's Sloan Harris. A pause, then a low whistle. Commander Harris. Been a while. Still keeping the world safe? Something like that, Sloan replied steadily. I need a deep dive on an Arlington PD officer and the department's misconduct record over the last 5 years. full backgrounds, financials, property holdings, associates, especially anyone linked to internal affairs. That's no small request, Commander, Marcus said seriously. Police departments don't like people digging into their secrets. Neither do I, Sloane said, glancing at her service weapon still resting silently on the counter. But someone's got to start cleaning house. Give me 48 hours. I'll send everything through our secure channel. And Sloane, watch your back. Small-town cops with secrets are worse than any enemy we've faced overseas. Understood. She ended the call and turned back to her laptop. The video still played silently on the screen, Brenner's smug smirk frozen in time as he violated her dignity. Sloane let the image imprint itself in her mind, fuel for the battle ahead. Outside, the afternoon sun stretched long shadows across her kitchen floor as another patrol car slowly passed by her house. They tried to intimidate her, to show who really controlled these streets, but they didn't know who they were dealing with. 2 decades in Delta Force had taught Sloane the power of patience and the importance of gathering every piece of intelligence before making a move. She started a new document, carefully typing out names, dates, and connections. Every detail mattered. Every link had to be verified. Justice wasn't about revenge. It was about precision. As dawn broke over Arlington, Sloane eased her charcoal BMW into a secluded spot beneath a weathered oak tree. Across the street, the public records office stood silent, its brick facade still dark and unwelcoming at this early hour. She chose this spot for its poor surveillance, a blind spot she'd noted during years of tactical consulting. Her iPad came to life, the blue glow illuminating her face as she settled in. A travel mug of black coffee cooled beside her. The profile on Officer Kyle Brenner was more detailed than she expected. 14 complaints, she whispered, scrolling through the report. The pattern was clear and deeply disturbing. 3 cases involved black women, all dismissed with the same bureaucratic language. Insufficient evidence. Case closed. Victim withdrew statement. Chanice Williams, the first victim, reported inappropriate touching during a 2019 traffic stop. Her complaint disappeared within weeks. Andrea Thompson filed a formal grievance about harassment during a 2020 search, only to retract her statement suddenly. Kesha Morris documented unwanted advances and threats in 2021, but was labeled uncooperative after missing a single follow-up. Sloane's jaw clenched. Each woman's story echoed her own. Unjustified stops, physical violations disguised as procedure, silent threats. But unlike Sloane, these women had no military training or powerful allies. They were vulnerable, isolated, silenced. She opened another file, the Internal Affairs Organizational Chart. At the top sat Jack Milner, Brenner's cousin by marriage. His personnel file showed rapid promotions, each timed with the dismissal of major misconduct cases. Family takes care of family, Sloane muttered, sipping her coffee. But corruption ran deeper. Scrolling through financial records, property deeds, and corporate filings, a web of connections emerged, leading straight to Civic Sentinel, a private security firm that had secured multiple municipal contracts over the past 3 years. The company specialized in community safety in so-called transitioning neighborhoods. Sloane pulled up Civic Sentinel's registration. The majority shareholder was a holding company, but Marcus had traced it to its true owner, Councilman Derek Vaughn, Arlington's self-proclaimed progressive voice. More documents flooded her screen. Civic Sentinel's patrol zones perfectly matched recently gentrified areas. Their security officers, many former cops with questionable records, had unusual access to police databases and dispatch. Complaints against regular officers in those neighborhoods dropped to 0, not because abuse stopped, but because Civic Sentinel controlled who could report what. She opened a thread of emails between Vaughn and city officials. The language was coded but clear. Civic Sentinel wasn't just guarding property. They managed demographic shifts. Property values soared, while longtime residents, mostly people of color, were pushed out by rising rents and constant harassment. Officers like Brenner were the front line, making life unbearable for those who didn't fit the ideal profile. A patrol car rolled past her spot. Sloane instinctively lowered her iPad. The car didn't slow, not Brenner, just routine patrol. Still, her pulse quickened. 20 years of combat taught her to trust those instincts. She returned to Vaughn's public statements. He styled himself as a police reform champion, praising community policing initiatives, the very programs that gave Civic Sentinel extraordinary power. The puzzle pieces fit like a tactical map. Brenner's harassment, his cousin's shield, Vaughn's security empire. This wasn't random. It was a carefully crafted system, one that thrived as long as people stayed afraid, stayed silent, stayed in their place. Her coffee had gone cold. After 2 hours of digging, Sloane had built a full picture of the corruption she'd uncovered, and it was just the beginning. Her military training had ingrained in her the need to gather intelligence before making a move, to fully understand the scope before acting. Now, the morning sun flooded the parking lot, washing away the shadows she'd used for cover. Soon, the Public Records Office would open, its staff ready to protect the very documents that laid bare their master's crimes. Sloane took one last look at the organizational chart on her screen, tracing the web connecting power, profit, and pain. Slowly, she closed her laptop and whispered, "It's never just one man." As the sun dipped low, casting long shadows across her front lawn, Sloane turned onto her street. Instantly, her finely honed Delta Force instincts sensed something was wrong. The motion-activated floodlight that usually welcomed her was dead silent. She eased into her driveway, engine running, eyes sharp. The mailbox door hung ajar. Fresh scratches scarred the lock. Someone had forced it open, leaving no attempt to conceal their handiwork. A message, not theft. Stepping out, Sloane moved cautiously, noting the precision of the damage. Clean cuts, professional tools. This wasn't random vandalism. Her gaze flicked upward to the porch, spotting the floodlight's disconnected wire, cut cleanly, not torn. Inside, gun drawn, she swept every room methodically. Nothing seemed disturbed, yet the air felt charged. Someone had been here, or wanted her to think so. Cold anger stirred, but stayed controlled. Amateur intimidation tactics, she muttered, holstering her weapon after the last room was clear. Still, she knew better than to dismiss the warning. In her line of work, threats rarely stayed just warnings. From her garage, she retrieved a locked case, emergency surveillance gear kept from her consulting days. Within an hour, Sloane had installed 3 hidden cameras covering her front approach and 2 more monitoring the back, each connected to a secure cloud server Ray had helped set up months ago, fully encrypted and backed up in multiple locations. Her phone buzzed, a message from her grocery delivery service. They were out of her usual coffee brand. She'd have to go herself. Fine. Movement would clear her mind. The Whole Foods was 10 minutes away. Taking her usual route, but with heightened awareness, Sloane spotted it 3 blocks in. A black Chevrolet Tahoe, 2 cars behind her. Clean, recent model. Government plates. At the next light, the Tahoe vanished, replaced by an identical SUV with civilian plates and a different driver. Sloane took a deliberate wrong turn, confirming she was being tailed. The SUV maintained a professional distance. Pulling into the grocery lot, she chose a spot with clear sight lines. The Tahoe cruised past again, now with a 3rd set of plates. They were trying to shake her, flaunting their reach while covering their tracks. Inside, Sloane moved efficiently, eyes scanning faces, tracking movements. An older man with a cart full of produce appeared in 3 different aisles. A woman in workout clothes lingered suspiciously nearby. Standard surveillance meant to be noticed. At checkout, she pulled out her phone to text Ray. Her fingers hovered over the keys, carefully choosing her words. No point encrypting this. If they're watching this closely, they've already compromised my basic communications. They know I'm onto them. Ray's quick reply. then expect them to escalate. The drive home stretched longer than usual. At a red light, her car's entertainment system suddenly rebooted, screen flickering before restarting. Not a coincidence. Modern vehicles were computers on wheels, vulnerable to the right interference. She parked, closed the garage door behind her, and drew her pistol before stepping inside. The house was dark and silent, just as she'd left it. Her new cameras showed no movement on her secure feed, but Sloane remained cautious. Moving like a shadow, pistol low but ready, she swept through each room, checking angles, clearing corners, noting sightlines through windows. Every dark space held potential threats now. The house was clear, but sleep would not come easy. Standing in the living room, hand near her pistol, Sloane watched the street through a crack in the curtains. They wanted her to feel exposed, vulnerable, alone. They'd made a mistake. They'd revealed too much, shown their hand early, exposed their resources. Now she knew exactly what she was up against. And if Delta Force had taught her anything, it was how to turn intimidation back on the intimidators. Her finger traced the grip of her weapon as she checked another window. The darkness pressed against the glass, but she stood firm, unafraid. They thought they were hunting her. They didn't realize she had spent her entire career learning how to be the hunter. The morning sun barely peeked over the horizon when Sloane pulled out of her driveway. Her car's diagnostic system had run a full check overnight, every system flawless. 2 blocks from home, red and blue lights flashed in her rearview mirror. Sloane's jaw tightened as she pulled over, positioning her car so her dash cam had the clearest view. The approaching officer was a woman, Officer Kelly, according to her nameplate. Her face was stern, expression locked in practiced intimidation. "License and registration," Kelly demanded without any greeting or explanation. "May I ask why I'm being stopped?" Sloane's voice stayed calm, hands clearly visible on the steering wheel. "Tail light infraction," Kelly said sharply, not even glancing at the supposed broken light. Sloane reached slowly for her documents, keeping steady eye contact in the side mirror. Kelly's hand rested deliberately on her weapon, a clear show of force meant to unsettle. But to Sloane, it only revealed insecurity and poor training. When she handed over her military ID and registration, Kelly's eyes narrowed at the credentials, lingering longer than necessary. Her thumb brushed over the federal clearance codes. A muscle twitched in her jaw. Recognition, maybe even uncertainty. "Wait here," Kelly ordered, returning to her patrol car. Sloane watched through her mirrors as Kelly made a call. 10 minutes passed. The morning commute moved around them, drivers slowing to stare. Finally, Kelly returned, thrusting the documents back through the window. "You're free to go. Fix that light." Her tone carried a warning that had nothing to do with vehicle maintenance. Sloane drove straight to her mechanic. As expected, all taillights were working perfectly. She had him document and photograph everything. Evidence mattered. That afternoon, her phone buzzed with an email from the Federal Consulting Division. Contract status update. Urgent. Her security clearance was under routine review. All current projects suspended. No timeline for reinstatement. She read the message twice, noting the careful bureaucratic language masking a clear threat. They were cutting off her income, her professional credentials, standard pressure tactics. At home, her secure phone lit up with alerts. Someone had posted her address on multiple neighborhood watch forums. The listing appeared on Civic Sentinel's private network, tagged as a community alert. "Watch this residence." Comments flooded in, each more hostile than the last. "Known troublemaker, anti-police activist, keep your children away, someone should teach her respect." Sloane screenshotted everything, downloading copies to encrypted drives. Her fingers flew across the keyboard, documenting times, usernames, IP addresses when visible. The posts were coordinated, timed to maximize exposure during peak evening hours. Her doorbell camera activated as a car drove by, slowly, deliberately. More neighbors now did exactly what the posts demanded, watching, reporting, unwitting tools in a harassment campaign. Sloan stood by the window, watching another vehicle crawl past. The driver didn't hide his phone as he filmed her house. They were trying to make her feel trapped, exposed, but they'd forgotten one thing. She'd spent years training soldiers to operate behind enemy lines. This was familiar ground. She pulled up her contacts and stopped at a name: Miriam James, a civil rights attorney renowned throughout Virginia for fighting police misconduct. She'd won impossible cases with sheer determination and sharp legal strategy. Sloan had vetted Miriam thoroughly the week before. The attorney's record showed a special knack for handling systemic abuse, and no ties to Arlington's political machine, no leverage for them to exploit. The phone rang 3 times before a firm voice answered. "James speaking?" "Ms. James, this is Sloan Harris. I need your help with a situation involving Arlington PD." A pause, then a low voice. "Delta Force Commander, I've been following your case through my channels, wondering when you'd call." Sloan glanced out as another car drove past, slower than the rest. A camera flash went off. She didn't flinch. "I'm ready to go public," Sloan said, her voice steady and sure, the voice of someone who had already calculated every outcome. The women's shelter stood at the end of a quiet street in southeast D.C. Its brick facade was weathered but dignified. Sloan parked 3 blocks away and walked the rest. Old habits die hard. Miriam James waited by the entrance, silver hair shining in the afternoon sun, leather briefcase firmly in hand. "You weren't followed?" Miriam asked, eyes scanning the street. "Not directly, but they'll figure it out soon enough." Sloan matched Miriam's low tone. "Ava's expecting us. 3rd floor. She's nervous. Took me 2 weeks to convince her to meet." They signed in under aliases, following a shelter worker through narrow hallways. Children's artwork lined the walls, bright colors against peeling paint. Sloan noted every exit, every camera, every possible vulnerability. Some things you just can't unlearn. Ava Marcus sat quietly at a small table in a counseling room, hands tightly folded in her lap, shoulders hunched as if trying to disappear. Dark circles under her eyes spoke of restless nights. When she looked up, Sloan caught a flicker of recognition, not of her face, but of her presence, the silent understanding trauma survivors often share. "Thank you for meeting us," Miriam said gently, taking a seat opposite Ava. "We can stop anytime you need." Ava nodded, voice barely above a whisper. "I saw what happened to you on the news, Miss Harris. What he did, it was the same for me 2 years ago." Sloan remained standing, encouraging, knowing some women felt safer with another woman between them and the door. "Tell us what you can." Ava took a shaky breath. "I was walking home from my night shift at the hospital. Officer Brenner stopped me, said there'd been reports of drug activity. He touched me during the search. When I tried to pull away, he slammed me against the car, said I was resisting." Miriam's pen moved steadily across her legal pad. "Did you file a complaint?" "I tried. Went straight to the station, but his cousin's in internal affairs." Ava's voice cracked. "They charged me instead, said I attacked him." "CPS showed up the next day," Ava continued, tears threatening. "Said my arrest made me unfit. They took my babies, Johnny and Maya. They're with their father now. He won't let me see them." Sloan's jaw clenched. She'd seen this pattern before, the system weaponized against those who dared speak out. A soft knock at the door made Ava flinch. A younger Latina woman entered, face set with determination despite her fear. "This is Lena Rowe," Miriam introduced. "She has a similar story." Lena pulled up a chair carefully. "Different precinct, same cop. He knows which women to target, those he thinks can't fight back." For the next hour, both women shared their experiences. Brenner's tactics were chillingly consistent. Isolated stops, inappropriate touching, escalating intimidation, followed by false charges, all buried by internal affairs. Miriam documented every detail, gently but precisely asking questions. "I've prepared draft testimonies," Miriam said, pulling papers from her briefcase. Read them carefully. Only sign if every word is true. As the women read, Sloan moved to the window. The shelter's security was decent, but had too many blind spots. Too many ways for someone determined to watch. A class action would be stronger than individual complaints, Miriam explained, but going to the press first could hurt our case. The press is already compromised, Sloan noted, thinking of the social media harassment campaign. They'll spin it no matter when we act. Ava looked up, strength building in her voice. I'll sign. I'm tired of hiding. Me too, Lena added. Let's make him face us all at once. The scratch of pens filled the room as Miriam carefully witnessed each signature, making copies with a portable scanner. When finished, she handed each woman a card with a secure contact number. Document everything from now on. Any strange cars, random stops, any CPS contact. If you feel unsafe, call immediately. They left separately, taking different exits. Sloan took the back stairs, emerging into the shelter's small parking lot. She scanned left to right, checking reflected surfaces for hidden watchers. That's when she saw it. A black SUV parked across from the shelter gate. Same model as before, different plates again. The tinted windows concealed the driver, but Sloan made out a silhouette. Someone was watching, waiting, sending a message. Back at home, Sloan transformed her office into a command center with military precision. 3 laptops formed a semicircle on her desk, each tracking a key part of the investigation. The largest screen displayed a detailed timeline of Brenner's complaints. Another tracked Civic Sentinel's municipal contracts. The third ran continuous public record searches. One wall was covered with a massive whiteboard, mapping tangled connections between Arlington PD internal affairs and city officials with red marker lines that grew more complex by the hour. Personnel files and testimonies were sorted neatly on a folding table, each tab color-coded by category. At exactly 9 a.m., the doorbell rang. Sloan checked the security camera. Nia Serrano stood on her porch. Tall, confident, with visible press credentials and a military bearing, Sloan recognized instantly. Nice setup, Nia said, after passing security checks, carrying a heavy messenger bag and a determined look. Reminds me of my intel days. Petty officer? Sloan asked, noticing Nia's instinctive hand placement. First class, naval intelligence before journalism. Nia unpacked her laptop. Still have some useful contacts. They worked with precision, Nia's investigative skills perfectly complementing Sloan's tactical mindset. Hours passed as they pieced together connections others had missed or deliberately hidden. Look at this pattern, Nia said, pulling up a spreadsheet. Civic Sentinel's contracts surged right after natural disasters. Hurricane relief, flood responses, times when oversight is weakest, Sloan finished, pointing to clusters of dates. Cross-reference these with the governor's emergency displacement fund. Nia's fingers flew over the keyboard. Got it. The fund was set up after Hurricane Maria, but most money flowed into community security projects in gentrifying neighborhoods, funneled through shell companies, then Civic Sentinel. Nia leaned back, eyes narrowing. They're using disaster relief funds to bankroll private surveillance, targeting specific groups during emergency relocations. Sloan drew another red line on the board. And Councilman Vaughn sits on the fund's oversight committee, while owning the company getting the contracts. Nia pulled up property records. Check this. Every neighborhood where Brenner faced complaints, Civic Sentinel installed new security systems within 6 months. They create emergencies to justify their response. Sloan's voice was icy. How many officers are in on this? They dug deeper. Nia accessed sealed court records with her press credentials. Sloan cross-checked them with internal affairs dismissals. A pattern emerged. Complaints buried, victims displaced, properties devalued, then snapped up by developers linked to Vaughn. They're not just harassing people, Nia realized. They're systematically driving them out. The wall map grew more tangled, red lines weaving police precincts, security contracts, housing authorities, shell companies, displacement funds, and private developers. At the center, Brenner, Vaughn, and a network of corrupt officials. Your assault wasn't random, Nia said quietly. You moved into a target zone. They didn't expect someone who could fight back. Sloan studied the evidence. Someone with resources, or someone willing to expose the entire system. Nia began sorting files into secure folders. This is more than police misconduct. It's institutional corruption using public funds. They worked past midnight, documenting everything. Nia set up encrypted backups while Sloan prepared evidence packages for Miriam, federal authorities, trusted media contacts. We need to act fast, Nia warned. Once they see what we've uncovered, they'll try to bury it. Or bury us, Sloan agreed. At 2 a.m., just as Nia was leaving, Sloan's secure line rang, blocked number. She activated recording and answered on speaker. A distorted voice crackled, "Back off. You have no idea what you're in for." Then the line went dead. At exactly 6 a.m., the Arlington Tribune's website exploded with the headline, "Commanded into Silence, One Woman's Stand Against a Corrupt System." Nia Serrano's byline sat beneath a powerful opening that rocked the community. Sloan watched the story go live from her kitchen, coffee untouched beside her laptop. The article was masterfully crafted, starting with her assault, then exposing the deeper corruption. Her smartwatch video played automatically, showing Officer Brenner's smug face as he violated her rights. Her phone buzzed nonstop, texts, calls, emails. She ignored them, focused on the flood of public response. The view count skyrocketed. By 8 a.m., 3 news vans lined her street. Reporters stood in her yard, broadcasting live. Sloan watched through security cameras as more crews arrived, setting up and jockeying for position. "They're running this nationally," Nia reported over the phone. "CNN just picked it up." Fox 2. "The governor's office keeps sending no-comment responses. They're only making it worse." "Any sign from internal affairs?" Sloan asked, scanning police frequencies. "Complete lockdown. But 3 officers just requested whistleblower protection through my editor. They want to talk." Sloan's secure email pinged. Interview requests from major networks. 60 Minutes, Dateline, Good Morning America. They wanted the decorated Delta Force commander who exposed systemic corruption, the warrior who fought back. "Morning Joe wants you live tomorrow," Nia said. "So does The View. This is blowing up faster than expected." Through her front windows, Sloan watched media and local activists gathering, holding signs demanding justice. Copies of Nia's article circulated, groups reading them on her lawn. Councilman Vaughn just announced an emergency press conference. "His hands are shaking in the preview footage," Nia reported. "He knows we have the contract trails." The article laid it all bare. Falsified emergency funds, targeted harassment campaigns, forced displacement of minorities, surveillance disguised as community safety. Each accusation backed by solid documents, witnesses, and verified data. Nia had cross-checked everything through multiple sources. Sloan's military phone lit up. Ray Jackson's name flashed on the screen. "You've stirred up a hornet's nest," he warned. "Pentagon's getting calls. They want to know if you broke any confidentiality agreements accessing those databases." "Everything was legal," Sloan replied calmly, "and necessary. They're scrambling. The governor's office is pressuring the DoD to discredit you, claiming you used military credentials to interfere with local law enforcement." "The truth isn't interference," Sloan said. Just then, a commotion outside drew her attention. Officer Brenner's victims had arrived, speaking to reporters. Ava Marcus stood tall before the cameras, describing how her children were taken after she reported his assault. Others joined, finally able to tell their stories. Sloan's home security system pinged. The black SUV that had been stalking her was parked 2 blocks away, occupants watching through tinted windows. Social media was exploding. Nia updated her. "Your hashtag is trending. People are coming forward from other precincts, other cities, similar patterns everywhere." The article's comment section filled with thousands of responses. Former residents sharing their own experiences, current officers expressing disgust, citizens demanding accountability. The story struck a nerve far beyond Arlington. At 11 a.m., Breaking news alerts flashed. The FBI announced a preliminary investigation into Civic Sentinel's contracts. The police chief called an emergency meeting. Internal affairs went dark. Office phones disconnected. "They're panicking," Nia observed. "Shredders running full-time at City Hall." According to my source inside, Sloan watched the chaos unfold with calm detachment. This was the exposure phase. Let them scramble. Let them make mistakes. Every reaction revealed new threads to pull. At precisely 2 p.m., the doorbell rang. Through the security camera, Sloan saw 2 men in suits holding official documents. Federal marshals, based on their stance and badges. "Ms. Harris," the taller one said, extending a thick envelope. "You've been served." It was a federal subpoena demanding immediate surrender of all electronic devices and encrypted data related to your investigation. The order cited national security concerns. Sloan took the envelope without expression, noting the classified markings. They were trying to bury the evidence under layers of clearance, a standard tactic when corruption runs deep. "Your devices must be surrendered within 24 hours, the marshal continued. "Any attempt to delete, copy, or transfer data will result in immediate arrest." Through her front window, Sloan saw the media filming the encounter. The story was about to enter a new phase. They thought bureaucracy and classification would silence her. They still didn't know who they were dealing with. Later, as the sun set and cast long shadows across her driveway, Sloan pulled in, exhausted from hours of media chaos. Something felt off immediately. Her tactical instincts, honed through years in Delta Force, flared to life. Her front door stood slightly ajar, maybe 2 inches, not enough for a casual observer, but a glaring warning to Sloan. She drew her sidearm smoothly. "Rook," she called softly. Her German shepherd, always eager to greet her, was silent. She moved through the entrance with practiced precision, checking corners, staying low. The house felt wrong, empty. Then she saw him. Rook lay motionless by the stone fireplace, his black and tan coat glossy even in fading light. No blood, no signs of trauma, just stillness where life should have been. "No, no, no," Sloan whispered, holstering her weapon and rushing to his side. His body was still warm, but no heartbeat pulsed beneath her trembling fingers. Nearby lay a half-eaten piece of meat, not from her kitchen, poisoned. A message. Sloan's fist clenched, struggling to hold back her fury. Rook had been more than a pet, her loyal companion through sleepless nights and memories too close to bear, her anchor during the hardest transitions. She forced herself to step back, assess the scene professionally. The house had been breached with expertise, no broken windows, no splintered frames. The security system showed a 3-minute power outage at 3:47 p.m., just enough time to slip in and out. Her cameras went dark during the same window. Her phone buzzed. Miriam James. "They're trying to classify everything," the attorney said bluntly. "I'm filing an emergency injunction to block the subpoena. This is a clear attempt to bury evidence under national security." Sloan stared at Rook's still form. "They killed my dog," she said softly. A sharp intake of breath came through the phone. "Are you safe? I can have a security team there in 20 minutes. "I need to focus on protecting our witnesses," Sloan replied steadily. "They're escalating." This was a professional hit. Clean entry, timed blackout, targeted strike. "Let me call in some favors with the FBI. We need protection." "No," Sloan cut him off sharply. "They've got hooks in federal agencies. That's why they're pushing the national security angle. Keep everything local for now." She ended the call and dialed Ray Jackson. He answered immediately. "I heard," he said grimly. "I'm trying to get you federal protection, but they've locked me out of the approval chain. Someone high up is running interference." "Shadow ops," Sloan said flatly. "Private contractors with government ties. This has Civic Sentinel's fingerprints all over it." "You're in shadow territory now," Ray warned. "These people operate between jurisdictions. They have badges when needed, deniability when they don't. The usual playbook won't work." Sloan moved to her kitchen, nerves on edge. The intruders had left subtle signs. A cabinet door not quite closed, a chair slightly askew, another message. "They can reach you anywhere. They're trying to spook me before the story spreads," she said. "Classic psychological warfare. Hit close to home, show access, create fear of the unknown. It's working, Ray replied. 3 witnesses already gone dark. Naya's editor is under pressure from their board. They're trying to isolate you. Sloan checked her supplies, weapons, ammo, go bags, everything untouched. They could have taken or tampered with anything but chose to kill her dog instead. Personal, emotional. I need you to do something, she told Ray. Pull satellite coverage for my street between 3:30 and 4 p.m. They had to stage near here for the blackout. That's highly classified. So is half the corruption we've uncovered. Fight fire with fire. She spent the next hour documenting everything, taking photos, collecting samples. The poisoned meat went into an evidence bag for private analysis. No trusting official labs now. As midnight approached, Sloan carried Rook's body to the backyard. The moonlight was enough to dig. Each shovel felt like 1,000 pounds. She worked steadily until dawn painted the sky gray. Birds began their morning songs as she laid Rook gently in his grave, wrapping him in his favorite blanket. Standing over the fresh earth, Sloan whispered, "I'm not backing down. Not now." Her vow hung heavy in the early morning stillness. She had crossed into their shadow world. They thought killing her dog would make her retreat. They badly miscalculated. Miriam James sat in her dim office, reviewing witness statements for the 100th time. Her desk lamp cast a warm glow over decades of legal texts and civil rights victories. At 72, she'd seen enough corruption to last lifetimes. But this case felt different, personal. Her computer chimed with a new message. Anonymous sender. I worked at Arlington PD Records. I have proof, everything. Meet me at Roz's Diner, 11 p.m. Come alone. Tori W. Miriam leaned back, mind racing. A precinct insider could change everything, or it could be a trap. She dialed Sloan. Got a potential whistleblower, Miriam said, former records clerk wanting to meet. Tori Willis, Sloan replied immediately. 27 years old, resigned 2 months ago. Clean record, no red flags. I vetted all recent departures. Miriam smiled. Of course, Sloan had mapped every possible ally. You think it's legit? One way to find out, but I'll have eyes on you. Rosie's Diner sat on the edge of town, a faded neon beacon of vinyl booths and endless coffee. At 11 p.m., only a few truckers lingered over late-night meals. Miriam chose a booth with clear sight lines to both exits. A young white woman in a plain gray hoodie slipped in on time, eyes darting nervously. She looked exactly like her ID photo. Shoulder-length brown hair, minimal makeup, a face meant to blend into any crowd. Ms. Willis? Miriam kept her voice low. Tori slid into the booth, hands trembling slightly. Thank you for coming. A tired-looking waitress approached. Miriam ordered coffee for both, buying time to study the younger woman. Tori's nervousness seemed genuine, the slight shake in her hands, inability to meet Miriam's eyes. Why now? Miriam asked once they were alone. You left the department months ago. Tori stared into her coffee. I couldn't sleep. After seeing what they did to her dog, she swallowed hard. I kept telling myself someone else would handle it, that it wasn't my problem anymore. But they're escalating, aren't they? And I have proof. Real proof. She reached into her hoodie pocket and carefully placed a small flash drive on the table. Everything's here. Emails about targeting neighborhoods. Shift logs showing officers covering for each other. Internal affairs reports buried, and Officer Brenner's body cam footage from this morning. The real version, not the edited one. Her voice hardened slightly. Afterwards, in the squad room, they laughed. Brenner bragged about it, showed them exactly how she couldn't finish. Why did you keep these files? Miriam asked gently. Tori's eyes filled with tears. Because I was a coward. I saw things for years. Reports disappearing, complaints buried, footage altered, but I never said anything. I just filed the paperwork, processed reports, pretended I didn't notice, Tori confessed, wiping her eyes roughly with her sleeve. But I couldn't delete everything, so I started keeping copies, just in case someone brave came along, someone they couldn't intimidate or buy off. The waitress returned with fresh coffee. The room fell silent until Miriam spoke softly. "They'll know it was you." "I know," Tori whispered, "but maybe this makes up for staying silent so long. A little bit, anyway." Miriam reached across the table and squeezed her hand. "Courage isn't about being fearless. It's about being scared and doing the right thing anyway." She carefully picked up the flash drive. "We'll protect you. Commander Harris has resources. We'll get you somewhere safe until this is over." Tori shook her head. "I have family in Minnesota. I already booked my ticket. Leaving tonight." She stood, pulling her hoodie tighter. "Just make it count." "Okay, we'll make them answer for everything," Miriam promised. Tori paused, looking back. "You know what finally made me do it? When I saw Commander Harris that morning, she looked so dignified, even while Brenner was being horrible. Like she knew exactly who she was. And I realized I needed to know who I was too." She touched the flash drive one last time. "I kept it because I knew someday someone would finally fight back." The Rayburn House office buzzed with anticipation. Camera crews jostled for position in the packed hearing room as the House Subcommittee on Law Enforcement Oversight prepared to begin. Sloan Harris sat perfectly still at the witness table, her military bearing clear even in civilian clothes. Beside her, Miriam James arranged her notes with practiced precision. Congresswoman Eleanor Chen called the session to order. "Today, we examine disturbing allegations of systemic abuse within the Arlington Police Department. Our first witness is Commander Sloan Harris." Sloan leaned forward to the microphone, her voice steady and controlled. "Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. I'm here today because what happened to me isn't unique. It's just that this time, they picked the wrong target." The room fell silent as she recounted that morning's jog, the patrol car, the stop, the violation. Her words were precise, almost clinical, yet the emotion beneath was unmistakable. "Officer Brenner didn't know my background," she continued. "He didn't know I was trained to recognize predatory behavior. He didn't know how systems protect men like him. He saw only what he wanted, another black woman to humiliate with impunity." Representative Marcus Wade leaned forward. "Commander Harris, you chose not to report this immediately. Why?" "Because I needed to understand the full scope," Sloan replied. "One corrupt officer is a problem, but a system built to protect him, that's a crisis." Miriam James took over, detailing the retaliatory campaign, the surveillance, the poisoned dog, the smear attempts. She projected documents onto the chamber's screens, internal emails, altered reports, buried complaints. "This goes beyond one department," Miriam declared. "We've uncovered a network of private security contracts, misused disaster funds, and coordinated harassment of victims who dare to speak." The committee called their next witness. Nia Serrano strode to the table, press credentials hanging from her neck. She laid out her findings, linking Civic Sentinel, Councilman Vaughn, and Arlington PD's internal affairs. "They built a parallel surveillance system," Nia explained, "funded by public money meant for hurricane relief. They targeted specific neighborhoods and demographics, and when complaints arose, they made them disappear." The room stirred as audio recordings played, officers laughing about harassment, discussing cover-ups, plotting retaliation against witnesses. Several committee members visibly recoiled. Then came the moment everyone awaited. The full, unedited body cam footage from Officer Brenner played on the screens. The assault lasted seconds, but the squad room footage afterward showed officers watching, laughing, making crude comments. Brenner bragged openly. One voice said clearly, "That'll teach her to jog in our neighborhood." Gasps echoed through the chamber as phones buzzed with live news alerts, the footage going viral instantly. Next, survivors testified. 3 women recounted similar assaults and cover-ups. Their voices shook but held firm, telling stories of lost jobs, homes, and custody for daring to report abuse. Congresswoman Chen's voice was tight with controlled anger. "Commander Harris, what immediate actions do you recommend?" "A full federal investigation," Sloan answered without hesitation. "Not just Arlington PD, but every department using these private security contracts. audit the disaster relief funds. Every complaint dismissed by compromised internal affairs divisions was reviewed, and most importantly, the victims who came forward were promised protection, because right now the system punished those who spoke out. Representative Wade nodded solemnly. I believe we've heard enough. This committee will call for immediate Justice Department intervention. As the hearing ended, phones throughout the chamber lit up simultaneously. News alerts flashed across screens. Breaking. Officer Kyle Brenner arrested by federal agents. Developing. Arlington Councilman Vaughn announces immediate resignation. Urgent. Virginia Attorney General opens criminal probe into police corruption. The room buzzed with murmurs. Cameras swung towards Sloan, but her expression stayed composed. She gathered her papers slowly and deliberately, just as she had been trained to do in countless high-pressure situations. A young aide hurried to Miriam, whispering urgently. Miriam's eyes widened as she turned to Sloan. Internal Affairs Director Milner has just resigned. The entire division is suspended pending investigation. Sloan nodded once, revealing nothing, but inside, a heavy weight she'd carried since that morning jog finally began to lift, not just for her, but for every woman silenced, for every victim who'd lost hope. As they walked toward the chamber doors, reporters shouted questions, camera lights flashing. But Sloan's mind was already focused on the next phase, making sure this momentum led to real change, not just headlines. They stepped into the marble hallway where Nia waited, fingers flying over her phone. It's everywhere, the journalist said. Every major network. Social media is exploding. They can't bury this anymore. Across town, blue and red lights flashed in front of Civic Sentinel's glass-fronted offices. FBI agents streamed through revolving doors. Employees gathered on the sidewalk, some shocked, others relieved, as if they'd been waiting for this day. Special Agent Marcus Torres directed the operation from the street, speaking quietly into his radio. Sweep the server room again. Check for any deletion attempts. He caught sight of Sloan watching from across the street and gave a slight nod. Inside Arlington Police Headquarters, similar scenes unfolded. Internal Affairs officers were escorted out, their computers seized, badges and weapons temporarily confiscated. Jack Milner, Brenner's cousin and former IIA director, sat stone-faced as agents boxed up his files. 20 years of cover-ups, one agent muttered, lifting a heavy box labeled Dismissed Complaints 2018 to 2023. All coming to light now. At the courthouse, Kyle Brenner stood before Judge Patricia Martinez, dressed in an orange jumpsuit. His usual swagger was gone, replaced by nervous fidgeting. His lawyer argued for bail, citing community ties and low flight risk. But Judge Martinez was firm. Given the severity of the charges and evidence of systematic witness intimidation, bail is denied. The defendant will be remanded to federal custody pending trial. Brenner's face went pale as U.S. Marshals led him away. In the gallery, several of his former victims watched silently, relief and lingering pain mixing on their faces. Across town, Councilman Derek Vaughn's attempted escape ended at Dulles International Airport. He made it as far as the private aviation terminal before federal agents surrounded his chartered plane. Led away in handcuffs, his carefully maintained political mask cracked. "You don't understand," he shouted at cameras. "We were maintaining order, protecting property values." Back at the precinct, newly appointed interim chief Sandra Martinez addressed the officers. Effective immediately, all employees who come forward with misconduct information will receive full whistleblower protection. This department's culture of silence ends today. In the following days, change rippled outward. The mayor established a civilian oversight board with real enforcement power. State legislators drafted bills to regulate private security contractors. Police union leadership was replaced after evidence surfaced of their role in suppressing complaints. Sloan found herself increasingly in demand as a speaker. Police agencies sought her input on training reforms. Civil rights organizations requested her expertise in building accountability systems. News programs interviewed her about her experience. "The problem isn't just bad actors," she told a packed auditorium at Georgetown Law School. "It's a system designed to protect them while punishing those who speak up. That has to change." In Arlington's neighborhoods, especially those targeted by Civic Sentinel surveillance, cautious optimism grew. Community meetings that once sparked tension now featured productive dialogues between residents and police representatives. Ava Marcus, one of Brenner's early victims, moved back into her old neighborhood. With her case reopened and record cleared, she regained custody of her children. Other survivors began coming forward, confident they would finally be heard. Tori Willis, the precinct clerk who provided crucial evidence, returned to work under new management. Colleagues who had once shunned her now sought her advice on reporting misconduct. Sloan launched a support group for department employees grappling with ethical challenges. At the federal courthouse, Brenner's former partners began accepting plea deals, trading information for reduced sentences. Each revelation sparked new investigations, reforms, and steps toward accountability. Nia Serrano's follow-up articles uncovered the full extent of the corruption. Millions in misappropriated funds, hundreds of buried complaints, and dozens of lives derailed by retaliation. Her reporting earned multiple awards and inspired similar probes in other cities. One morning, Sloan visited Miriam's office to find the attorney surrounded by framed newspaper headlines. "Justice served, police corruption ring exposed, reform sweeps Arlington PD, victims vindicated as officials face charges." Miriam traced her fingers over a headline about new whistleblower protections. "You know what this proves?" she asked as Sloan joined her. "Justice is still possible." Together, they studied the clippings, each representing another crack in a system that once seemed impenetrable. Photos showed Brenner in custody, Vaughn in handcuffs, federal agents hauling boxes of evidence. But most importantly, survivors speaking out, communities healing, officers choosing integrity over silence. "The work isn't finished," Miriam added, adjusting a frame. "But for the first time in a long while, I believe we're moving in the right direction." 3 whirlwind months passed. Sloan stood in the Department of Justice's main conference room, surrounded by polished wood panels and the weight of history. Attorney General Rebecca Chen handed her the official appointment letter. "Director Harris," Chen said, "Vanguard oversight is now your command. Make it count." Sloan ran her fingers over the embossed DOJ seal. The initiative embodied everything they had fought for: systematic accountability, veteran-led oversight, and a direct pipeline for survivors to seek justice. Her office would have federal authority to audit any police department in America. The next morning, Sloan entered Vanguard's newly established headquarters in Crystal City. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed a clear view of the Pentagon across the river, a deliberate choice. Energy hummed through the space as her hand-picked team settled in. "Welcome to day one," Sloan addressed the group. "Each of you understands both sides, the need for effective law enforcement and the devastating impact of unchecked power." Her core team struck a careful balance. Former Marine Corps JAG officers led legal affairs. Army intelligence veterans managed data analysis. Air Force security specialists handled protection for witnesses and whistleblowers. Nia Serrano's desk sat prominently in the investigations wing. She had resigned from her newspaper to become Vanguard's chief research advisor, bringing relentless attention to detail and an expansive network of sources. "These aren't isolated incidents," Nia explained, pointing to a wall of connected cases. "Pull one thread, and you find similar abuse patterns across jurisdictions." Miriam James headed Vanguard's legal strategy division from a corner office filled with case files and civil rights law texts. Her decades of experience guided younger attorneys through the complex intersection of law enforcement and accountability. "The system isn't broken," Miriam often reminded the team. "It was built this way. Our job is to rebuild it properly." Their first major task targeted Arlington. A full audit of every complaint filed in the past decade. The team reviewed body cam footage, personnel files, internal communications, and financial records. They interviewed hundreds of officers, victims, and witnesses. The findings were worse than expected. Dozens of officers had taken part in cover-ups. Hundreds of legitimate complaints were buried. Millions of taxpayer dollars funneled through shell companies like Civic Sentinel, but change came swiftly. The new police chief embraced Vanguard's recommendations, implementing mandatory reporting and external review boards. Officers who once stayed silent now had clear, protected channels to report misconduct without fear of retaliation. One morning, Sloan received a visitor she'd hoped to see. Ava Marcus walked into Vanguard's office holding the hands of her 2 children. After months of legal battles and court-ordered reviews, Ava had regained full custody. "The judge threw out every charge," Ava said, tears welling in her eyes. The evidence of police misconduct invalidated the whole case. Her daughter hugged her leg while her son explored the office with curious eyes. Sloan watched them quietly, satisfaction in her heart. This was why Vanguard existed, not just to punish corrupt officers, but to restore what they had stolen from people like Ava. The initiative's impact spread rapidly. Police departments across the country began proactively requesting Vanguard audits, aiming to address problems before they spiraled. Veteran groups offered expertise. Survivors formed support networks. In the DOJ's marble-columned Great Hall, Sloan prepared for her first major public address. 2,000 people filled the audience. Police chiefs, civil rights leaders, elected officials, and most importantly, survivors of abuse. She spotted familiar faces. Miriam sat in the front row, her usual stern expression softened with pride. Nia had her reporter's notebook ready, though now she wrote from the inside. Ava and her children watched from specially reserved seats as Sloan approached the podium. Her Delta Force training was evident in her posture, measured movements, and calm authority. But her words carried the weight of every person who had ever faced abuse and found no justice. 3 months ago, we launched Vanguard Oversight with a simple mission, she began, to ensure those who enforce the law cannot place themselves above it. Today, I'm proud to report that we've audited 12 departments, reviewed over 10,000 complaints, and helped restore justice to hundreds of victims. She paused, letting her gaze sweep the room. But numbers don't tell the full story. Behind every statistic is a person wronged, a family torn apart, a community that lost faith in the system meant to protect them. The crowd listened intently as she detailed Vanguard's work. Methodical investigations, pattern analysis, and a commitment to accountability and reform. She explained how military veterans brought unique skills to oversight roles, understanding discipline and the dangers of unchecked authority. "We will not be intimidated," she declared, her voice echoing through the hall. "We will not be erased." 6 months later, dawn painted Arlington's sky in soft pinks and golds as Sloan knelt beside Rook's granite headstone, her morning coffee steaming in the cool air. She'd planted wildflowers around the marker, blues and purples that reminded her of mountain trails they once hiked together. "Morning, old friend," she whispered, touching the smooth stone. Rook's death still ached, a reminder of how vicious the fight had become. But looking at the thriving garden, Sloan felt a different strength now, not the tense readiness of combat, but something deeper and lasting. She sipped her coffee slowly, letting the morning stillness wash over her. The past 6 months had transformed more than police departments. Communities were healing. Officers who stayed silent for years now had safe ways to report misconduct. Victims found their voices again. Her phone buzzed. A message from Ray brought a smile. "Just watched your interview. You did it." The 60-minute segment aired last night, a full profile on Vanguard's work and impact. At first, Sloan hesitated, preferring quiet work. But Nia convinced her transparency mattered. People needed to see change was possible. The interview covered everything, from that morning jog and Brenner's assault to the creation of Vanguard. It showed body cam footage, testimonies from reform departments, and stories of families reunited after years of systemic separation. Sloan traced Rook's name on the headstone. Wish you could see it, boy. We're making it right. The garden had become her sanctuary during the hardest days, where she processed survivors' stories, planned next steps, or simply breathed. Raised beds now burst with vegetables, tomatoes, peppers, herbs filling the air with sharp, clean scents. Her watch showed 6:45 a.m. Soon, she'd head to the office where stacks of case files awaited. Operations had expanded to 30 states, with daily requests pouring in. Police unions that once resisted now sought Vanguard's guidance on reforms. A patrol car rolled slowly down her street. Sloane's hand no longer tensed at her hip, a small but powerful change. The officer inside, a woman from recent training sessions, nodded respectfully. It wasn't just courtesy. The culture had shifted. Arlington's new police chief had embraced Vanguard's oversight, genuinely implementing recommendations. Young officers especially valued clear guidelines and protection when reporting misconduct. Sloane remembered Brenner's face in court, the smirk replaced by defeat. 15 years for assault, corruption, and civil rights violations. He'd lost his swagger, his certainty in the system's protection. His cousin in internal affairs faced similar charges, but revenge was never the goal. What mattered were the changes rippling outward. Ava Marcus now led a support network for families affected by police misconduct. Tori Willis, the brave clerk who preserved crucial evidence, helped design whistleblower protections. Morning sounds drifted in, the city waking, traffic building, birds calling, a neighbor's door closing. Sloane finished her coffee, feeling purpose coursing through her veins. Her phone buzzed again. Miriam, I need your eyes on the Seattle audit. Something bigger than we thought. That was becoming routine. One investigation led to another, revealing threads of a larger pattern. They learned to follow those threads carefully, building airtight cases before moving forward. Patience and precision, just like her Delta Force days. The garden's peace had done its work, centering her for the day ahead. Sloane stood tall, posture military straight despite casual clothes. The quiet storm that had driven her through combat zones and federal hearings still burned behind her eyes, now tempered by experience and victory. She walked to the back door, noting the security system's steady green light, the camera's silent watch. Old habits merged with new purpose. She'd learned to balance vigilance with openness, strength with accessibility. Inside, she locked the door with practiced efficiency. Her home office held the start of Vanguard's next major investigation. Files spread across dual monitors, timelines mapped on whiteboards, witness statements waiting review. Another city, another department, another chance to ensure accountability. I hope you enjoyed that story. Please like the video and subscribe so you don't miss the next one. In the meantime, I've handpicked 2 stories I think you'll love. Have a great day.